I hope that you've all got your sunglasses on for this week's Bleach Monday, because episode 6, titled The Fire, features the incredibly intense battle between Yamamoto versus Yhwach, where the head captain finally reveals his Bankai zankanotachi. This latest episode of Bleach's 1000 Year Blood War anime covers material from chapters 506 to 510, adapting a total of 5 chapters worth of manga material. There is so much to talk about with episode 6 because I was genuinely surprised by all of the additional material that they had included within the anime, including some more Uryu scenes, some new fight sequences between Yamamoto and Yhwach, and they had even shown us the entire exchange between Aizen and Yhwach within Muken. Now, before I give everything away in the intro, let's start at the beginning of the episode, where it begins with an anime exclusive scene building upon the expanded content, which involves the character of Uryu Ishida. We see him reading Soken Ishida's book, which details the history of the Quincy, where he learns about a great battle between the Quincy and the Shinigami that had occurred 1000 years ago. This confuses him because up until the final arc of Bleach, we had thought that the Quincy were eradicated by the Shinigami 200 years ago, but while reading the book we see a sketch of a young Yamamoto having just activated his Bankai. Now this is the start of a fantastic trend within this episode, where we are constantly cutting back to a younger Yamamoto during his battle against Yhwach from a millennia ago. Now this episode entirely focuses on the battle between Yamamoto versus Yhwach, and after the intro song we start with where episode 5 had left off, with Yamamoto confronting the leader of the Quincy, who is holding up the lifeless body of Kenpachi Zaraki. Now the anime has a nice added scene here where we see Yamamoto actually take Kenpachi's body and rest it onto the ground. We then see an exchange between Shunsui and Robert, where the Sternritter speaks about the morale of the Quincy also being boosted when they know that their boss is in battle too. Yamamoto is then ambushed by the 3 Sternritters Nanana, Bazbi and Aznod, but he makes quick work of them by incinerating them with his Shikai. We are then shown some amazing anime only shots of the captains in their fighting stances as an explosion of flames can be seen off in the distance. The entire lighting and atmosphere of the Soul Society is now enveloped by Yamamoto's flames, and this is a stark contrast to how it had looked blue after the invasion of the Quincy. Now these stunning visuals featuring the captains with this explosion behind them is the first of many amazing visuals that will blow you away within this episode. Their battle finally begins with the head captain actually landing the first strike, drawing blood from Yhwach's arm. When the blood drops onto the floor, it immediately begins to boil and evaporate because of the burning intensity of Yamamoto's spiritual pressure. Like I had mentioned earlier, we constantly get flashbacks to the past during this episode, where we see Yhwach stood on top of a pile of corpses of his own men, with this beautiful mix of conventional yellow flames and the blue flames of Reishi that are identified by the Quincy. Now this is how the scenes in the past can be identified, while the scenes taking place in the present are covered by the flames of Yamamoto. Following this, we get our first proper anime only fight sequence between the two of them, where we are shown some dynamic attacks that send the characters hurtling through the air. Now while these dynamic visuals are surrounded by a dark, detailed rendition of the Serete covered in flames, as it feels like the entire Soul Society is burning up. I love that a few off-screen clashes that occur within the manga were given so much room to breathe in the anime. You can really tell that the anime staff wanted to explore and expand upon every aspect of this fight. The additional anime only sequences end with Yhwach finally drawing his own blade, as Yamamoto reveals that he has been waiting to crush his flesh, blood and sword. And my god, the moment that we've all been waiting for, with the flames that surround them all suddenly vanishing, as we see the humidity still remain in the air, as the anime does such a good job of conveying this, especially with the reactions of Ukitake, Shunsui, Unohana and Hitsugaya. And these reactions are of course to head captain Yamamoto having just activated his Bankai zankanotachi. The entire scenery and atmosphere of the Soul Society has been changed now that the flames have been absorbed by his Zanpakuto. We cut to several shots of the Soul Society before the captain's reactions, as we see the true devastation that has unfolded after the Quincy's attack. Yhwach recalls that zankanotachi is a Bankai that locks away all of Yamamoto's flames into his blade, allowing him to end any battle with one strike. We yet again have a callback to a younger Yamamoto here from their first battle from 1000 years ago. However, the leader of the Quincy is about to face off against a newer version of zankanotachi that is far more refined than what he had experienced a millennia ago. I have to say that I love how the anime depicts the atmosphere and visuals here, and how they have changed from how they looked before. Everything is back to being in daylight, but with this wave of humidity reminding you that Yamamoto is still in control of the battlefield. This Bankai is indeed very different different to what Yhwach had encountered, as no flames are emitted after the swing of his blade, but he quickly learns that Yamamoto's flames are being condensed and contained within the tip of his blade. One of my favorite Yamamoto moments is adapted here, where the tip of his zanpakuto lightly hits the ground and it opens up this huge gaping hole as it highlights the incredible power of his Bankai. We then are given a brief but really dynamic fight scene of Yhwach hurtling some boulders towards Yamamoto, who effortlessly destroys them with his blade. Now this first part of his Bankai is called zankanotachi East. It neither burns or emits a flame. Instead, it blows away everything that the tip of his blade comes into contact with, leaving no traces behind. This episode has this superb scene where it gets dark around Yamamoto as his scorching zanpakuto lights up and begins to steam. Another glimpse from the past is shown to us here just before Yamamoto reveals zankanotachi West. He recalls how 1,000 years ago Yhwach was defeated, as we see his bloodied face laying on top of a pile of corpses of his old men. We once again see the flames burning all around him with this yellow and blue flame, with a young Yamamoto standing over him. These callbacks are incredible and are blended well into the present day battle between the two of them. After he activates zankanotachi West, Yhwach recalls how a younger Yamamoto had a very similar power 1,000 years ago, as we see the two different eras of the head captain enveloped by the flames of the sun. With a temperature of over 15 million degrees, zankanotachi West once again covers the battlefield in flames, as it seems like their battle is now taking place in the center of an erupting volcano. After Yamamoto states that they need to end their battle soon before the Soul Society is destroyed by his power, we then cut to yet another anime-only scene of Uryu. Now this follows up from the start of the episode where he learns about the original battle between the Quincy and the Shinigami from 1,000 years ago. This scene recalls some key historical events about how the Quincy were defeated in the original battle between the Shinigami and Quincy. And then it is revealed that the surviving members of the Quincy race were killed 200 years ago. Now the anime gives us a better insight into Uryu's mindset here, because the manga is pretty vague about Uryu's character, as it doesn't show him at all during the first invasion of the Quincy, and it makes it difficult to understand the decisions that he makes later on in this arc. And I definitely love how he is being handled and given more screen time within the anime, and through his character we are learning more about the feuding history of the Shinigami and Quincy. I love the scene where Yhwach fires his arrow at Yamamoto at the midpoint of this episode, as Yamamoto's flames are all encompassing and animated so well here, with the blue arrow really contrasting well against them. Yamamoto tells Yhwach that he only has his arrows left to use now that his sword is broken. We then cut to another flashback with Yhwach being cornered, with a Shinigami behind him standing on top of the corpses of the Quincy, with Yhwach in the middle charging an arrow facing towards a younger Yamamoto. Now does the inclusion of this Shinigami mean that we are getting the first battle between the Shinigami and Quincy next week in episode 7? Especially considering how many times they have cut back to it during this episode, constantly showing us a defeated or cornered Yhwach with a furious younger Yamamoto. Yhwach then activates his church song Sanctuary Praise, and it again looks visually impressive in the anime, with the different visual effects and overpowering blue color, and this incredible animation sequence, where we see the pillars of blue reishi falling around Yhwach as he states that this is a Quincy's ultimate offensive and defensive technique. In retaliation, Yamamoto ends up activating zankanotachi South. This third phase of his Bankai is animated as Sagisu's music blares in the background, emphasizing the intensity of this showdown. Now the real highlight and best moment of this episode for me was zankanotachi South. The anime blew all of my expectations out of the water with the visuals and sound design for this stage of his Bankai. This was in fact what a lot of us were waiting to see animated for years, and it is safe to say that it has been adapted far better than what any of us could have hoped for. The great corpse formation of a trillion flames features these menacing red skeletal figures marching towards Yhwach as the ashes of those who had fallen to Yamamoto's blade over the years are brought back to life. Of course, his church song ability collapses as the third phase of Yamamoto's Bankai once again changes the surroundings to what can be best described as the depths of hell, where Yhwach is reunited with his fallen comrades from 1,000 years ago. Now all of these individuals were killed by Yamamoto back then, and this undead army is under his control as they act as his hands and feet to relentlessly target his opponent until they are turned to dust. The anime does a superb job of showing these corpses grab and restrain Yhwach. He ends up laughing in the face of this horrific scene as he scolds Yamamoto for hypocritically claiming to be a Shinigami while he brings the dead back to life. The purple landscape is littered with these red skeletons that just look amazing, and in particular I love Yamamoto's look here too, with the flames completely enveloping him. Additionally, I really like how Yhwach recalls his fallen comrades for a second time. Another glimpse from the past happens where we see Yhwach walking towards Yamamoto, which is paired up with the present where he is walking past the corpses of his fallen men. He pushes past the undead skeletal remains of his comrades, as we then get this amazing anime-only visual of all of his subordinates who had died at Yamamoto's hands, as he tells Yhwach that he must be in pain having to crush the remains of his men just to get to him. But in response, Yamamoto states that his sadness and hatred cannot be compared to his own after he has lost so many of his men at the hands of the Quincy, as the anime cuts to silence, showing us glimpses from the prior episodes, particularly paying homage to Sasakibe. This further emphasizes the pain that Yamamoto is also feeling, and how zankanotachi South is a poetic justice for Yhwach after everything that he has done. He then activates zankanotachi North in another absolutely wild scene that I am left awestruck after seeing. All of the skeletons are obliterated as this final attack of Yamamoto's Bankai hits Yhwach. The animation is depicted with this impressive, messy style that captures the raw power of this attack, with the bright colors and the raging flames all coming together into this blinding white light that takes out the leader of the Quincy, who is seen to have been cut clean in two. His torso has completely vanished along with his left arm. Now zankanotachi North, the final attack of his Bankai, appears to have killed Yhwach. With his Bankai now deactivating and the setting and surrounding no longer looking like hell, it begins to pour down with rain, as it is revealed that Yamamoto was actually fighting an imposter this entire time. Yamamoto asks who on earth he has been fighting, when he then witnesses an explosion erupt from his 1st Division barracks, with a real Yhwach appearing behind him. We learn that Yamamoto has been battling against the Sternritter Royd, who has the ability to mimic the memories, mind and appearance of another. Yhwach thanks his subordinate for doing well in his absence as he then kills him. We then get another highlight for this episode as we learn where Yhwach has been this entire time, as we cut to a 2-minute sequence of Yhwach speaking to Aizen within the central underground prison Muken. Now this is one of the things that I desperately wanted to see in the anime adaptation of Bleach's final arc, since the manga had only dedicated one panel to this. Thankfully, the anime shows us the entire exchange between the two of them. It is honestly surreal to hear the voice actor of Aizen once again, including new animated material of his character so soon in this arc. Muken is depicted in complete darkness aside from the purple light shining onto Aizen's body and Yhwach, and after such a hype-filled battle between Yamamoto and Yhwach, we now get to see Aizen again, and him being offered to join the Wandenreich, and it is honestly way too much to handle for one episode. Yhwach tries to convince him to join by stating that they are on the same path to destroy the Soul Society, to which Aizen responds by refusing his offer. He explains that it pains him to see the leader of the Quincy follow in his footsteps. When Yhwach tends to leave, Aizen questions if he had come here because he had considered Aizen's power to be a threat to him. Yhwach agrees that it is of concern to him, especially knowing that Aizen has now merged with the Hokyoku, so it would be a pain to kill him here, but the fact that he is sealed works in his favor. Aizen is grateful for Yhwach's sake that they had only shared in their same path for a short period of time, because if Aizen was successful with his plans, then he would have had to one day battle Yhwach himself for the throne of the Soul King. Following this tense and jaw-dropping encounter between the two antagonists, Yamamoto tries to use his Bankai again, but it is stolen by Yhwach, who reveals that he is the only one who can contain the immense power of it, hence why no other Quincy had attempted to steal it until now. He then summons a large reishi sword that falls from the sky as he wields it and bids farewell to Yamamoto, who ends up being cut down from where he stands. Now this impactful, heart-stopping cliffhanger is where episode 6 concludes. Now before giving my final thoughts in the episode, you will be pleased to know that Retro Rhino, who had done work on a fan-animated 1000 Year Blood War arc anime from 2016 to 2019, even having released his own episode 1, was involved with animating some of the scenes during this episode. Here you can see the credit Ryan White, which is Retro Rhino's real name, and it is an amazing full circle moment where someone so passionate for the series, who had done some of his own fan animation, was involved in the best episode thus far of the Bleach anime. So yeah, thanks to to Ryan for his work and the anime staff for all of their dedication to Bleach, and to his dedication over the last few years, as I was looking forward to seeing if he was going to be working on the official anime, and I am more than happy to see his name attached to episode 6. This episode had featured a lot of anime only scenes involving Uryu, some fight sequences, shots from 1,000 years ago, and Yhwach's full meeting with Aizen. Now there were some cutscenes from the 5 chapters that were adapted into this episode, but they offer very little in comparison to what we had received in this impactful, amazing 6th episode. Each phase of Yamamoto's Bankai was given proper justice, with the highlight going to Zankanotachi South, with the mix of CGI and impressive colors and visual effects that combined to give us the most memorable moment of this episode. Yet again, it's another strong release, and I have to say, for another week, this is the best episode of the new Bleach anime that we've received thus far, and I don't think that it'll be topped by any of the other episodes during this first core of the anime. There's a lot to love and appreciate about this one, and I know that Yamamoto vs Yhwach will be talked about for a very long time. And as with every episode of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, I will be back again tomorrow to discuss what changes that have been made between the anime versus the manga, as we go over all of the additional scenes, cut content, and what changes were made to improve the pacing of the episode. Now be sure to definitely subscribe and stick around to the channel so that you're the first one to see my comparison video when it drops. Lastly, let me know all of your thoughts about this 6th episode. Were you as blown away as I am? And do you think that it's the best episode we've had thus far? Thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach video.